Hello, good to see everybody. I'm your host for today's Photoshop challenge. My name is Sam Peterson, and we're going to be creating a galaxy portrait composite today. It's going to be a sort of sci-fi surreal portrait. Let me show you what that's going to look like. This is our document that we're working with, and the design is going to look something a little bit like this. So we're going to be covering some fun different techniques to achieve this look. If you want to follow along, definitely check out the starter file that has all the resources that you're going to need for this challenge. It's going to be in the link in the description below. So let's jump right into this. I'm going to get rid of that example, and this is the base image we're working with. You can apply these techniques to pretty much any image, but this is the one we're going to be using today. So first and foremost, what I need to do is cut out the figure from the background. So to do that, I'm going to select my quick selection tool over here on the left-hand side with the tool panel, hotkey W. And I'm going to select subject, this button at the top here, select subject. I'm going to click that. I use this like 99% of the time because it gets the bulk of the work done for me. So what I want to do here is take my quick selection tool and clean up anything that I don't think went exactly how I wanted. I can see that down here in the arm, it missed a spot. So I'm going to hold on Shift to add to my selection. And I'm just going to try to grab this edge of the arm with the quick selection tool. That looks pretty good. It looks like it missed some of the hair here. I'm just going to kind of grab that by holding on Shift and selecting. This part of the head didn't get selected. You can see it's having a little difficulty because the hair pretty much gets a lost edge with the background. They almost blend in seamlessly. So this particular image is a little bit of a challenge for those kind of AI driven tools because the contrast becomes so little. And I actually don't want the eye or the eyelashes with this image in particular because of the technique we're going to do. So I'm going to get rid of that by holding, I don't know if I said this, but you can hold on Alt or Option to subtract, hold on Shift to add. So I think that looks pretty good. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go up to Select and Mask at the top. I'm going to click that. And that's going to allow us to refine this selection a bit. You can kind of see how hard the edges are on the hair. I have this Refine Edge Brush tool selected here over on the left. And I'm going to just click around the outside edge there. It looks like it softened that edge a bit. Same thing with this hair I selected. It made it very hard. So I'm just going to select around the outside edge there. That's okay. It's definitely better than what we had. I might do that for this hair off to the left-hand side. See how that does. The hair up here is looking pretty good. We could try running it through just to see. You can always Control Z and kind of see how it changed it. I'm going to leave it how it was. I did notice that the outside edge of the face is oddly sharp here. So I'm going to try this on the face too. Let's see how it does with that selection. Let's try that again. Yeah, that looks a little bit more softened. We can see if the edges of this look kind of hard. And I think that's good. We'll leave it at that. We'll click OK. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this mask button at the very bottom, at the bottom of the layers panel, this little rectangle. It says add a mask if you hover over it, and we will mask it out. So what I want to do from here is I want to add a background. It's hard to see because it's essentially a white background that we're looking at. And this is a very high key lit image. So I'm going to do Control or Command Shift N, hotkey for a new layer. You can also go up to the top, layer, new, and then new layer. But I'm just going to leave it. This is a temporary layer. Click and drag that layer below your portrait. I'm pressing G for the fill bucket, and then I'm selecting black, and I'm going to fill that new layer in. Now we can see that this mask still needs a little work. So a lot of times you have all those tools. You have the quick selection tool, you have the AI driven tool of like select subject. You can even do select and mask to refine it, but sometimes after the fact you still need to adjust the mask. So what we might do here is make sure our mask is selected, the little icon to the right of our layer. And I'm going to go in here and refine edges that I might have missed. So if you paint with white, that will reveal and black will conceal. So you can switch between black and white here to hide it or to add to it. So if you ever feel comfortable painting in masks, that's also an option. You can also use all those tools that we talked about and spend a little bit more time refining it that way. But sometimes I like to use those and then just use maybe this soft brush on the hair a little bit. Looks like we got a weird edge there, right near the ear, and I'm just painting white to reveal areas that it got rid of. Yeah, I could make a larger brush with the bracket keys. That's the hotkey, and kind of paint that in a little bit more there. It looks like it got rid of some of the face. I'm not a fan of that. I'm gonna make my brush smaller with the bracket keys and just paint it there. So you can spend as long as you want on this, but I think that's pretty good. It doesn't need to be perfect. But of course, if you want to, you can spend as much time as you need to at this stage. All right, so I think that looks good. I'm going to get rid of our black background. And the reason I chose that was because it's actually pretty close to our background that we're going to choose for this particular design. So I have a couple images here that are included with the starter file. And I'm going to take this galaxy background. I'm going to do Controller Command A to select all, Controller Command C to copy, and then Controller Command V to paste it in my document. I'm going to click that new layer, drag it below the portrait layer. I'm just going to call this background. I like to name my layers. This portrait that we have we'll call portrait. And then I'm going to select this background, and with the move tool over here at the top left-hand side, hotkey V, I'm just going to scale this. But before I do, I'm going to right-click it, do convert to smart object, and that way we can scale it down without losing it in case we want to adjust it later. We can always scale it back up without losing information with the smart object. So I think that looks pretty good. What I want to do here is create the surreal part of this portrait. So that is going to be that kind of hole that we created in the face. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually grab my pen tool. And you can see over here, hotkey is P. And I'm going to make sure that the path is selected up here, this little drop-down menu. You see shape, path, pixels. I'm going to make sure it's selected to path. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make as few points as I can to create a nice circle shape. I'm going to start next to the eye because this is going to be sort of the edge that I have to run along without going over. So I'm going to click and drag, and then I'll put one near the mouth as well. Click and drag, and the further you drag, the more curve you can get to this. So just pull it out until it lines up nicely with that face. Again, I'm trying to create as few curves as possible, and for a circle, I find that like 4 points for this shape works quite well. It's easier to control when you have fewer shapes. So I'm also going to click maybe right here on the jaw, click and drag until I get that curve just like I like it. And then maybe right around the forehead here. Click and drag to get a nice curve. I can always do Control Z if I want to reposition it. Maybe that's more of a curve that I like. And then I'm going to click the endpoint and just drag it out till I get a nice oval shape around the forehead there. So from here you can hold on Controller Command and you can select different points to highlight them and adjust them. So you don't have to stick with what you just made. You can grab these keys, you can click and drag it. Make sure you select that individual point first. I can select this point, click and drag it out, and reposition it, fine tune it with the handles, do whatever I need to do. So I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to go on top of my portrait layer, and I'm just going to do the selection button here right at the top. So we have our pen tool selected, and you can turn it into a selection, a mask, or a shape. For this purpose, I want to do a selection. I don't want to feather the radius at all. I think all this looks good, so I'm going to do OK. And then I'm going to do Controller Command J, which is the hotkey for duplicate layer. And that's going to take this face layer to that selection that we created to its new layer. So I'm going to type in face for this. So we have our portrait layer and our face layer. Then what I want to do is I want to control click the face layer that we just created to get that selection back. And then what we can do is we can go onto our portrait layer, mask. Make sure you select the mask to the right of the portrait, the little black and white image. And I'm going to get my fill bucket tool over here on the left, select black, and then hide it. Now you don't see anything because we still have our face layer up, so I'm going to hide that. But now we have this little selection here, or I'm sorry, this mask in our portrait image, and the face fills that in. So I think that looks pretty good. The last thing I want to do for this step is create a backing shape. Let's see here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer, Control-Shift-N, and then I'm going to get my pen tool again. So what I want to do is basically trace over what we just have. I want to make it a little wider because this is going to be hiding under our portrait. So I'm just making sure that that line goes between the little gaps in the portrait. And this one doesn't really matter how many points we use, but I'm still going to try to keep it clean. I'm going to click here right around the jaw, and then I'm going to switch it over. So maybe we'll try in the middle here. I'm going to try to get this backing shape that looks a little bit 3D. So giving it a nice curve, and then I'm going to click up here, continue that curve. I think that could look pretty good. And then I'm going to click the endpoint to finalize it. Try to make that fit within. I'm going to create a selection up here at the top now that we have our shape. Okay. And I'm going to fill this in with a color. Now I'm going to fill it in with a shadow color. See this shadow below the chin, or even like in the collarbone? I like this kind of saturated light shadow. So I'm going to eyedropper tool that with Alter Option, select that color, and then fill it in here. So now we have our little backing shape. And I think that looks pretty good. I think that's kind of a convincing shape. Could even try warping this after the fact if I want. Warp, by the way, I have it on a hotkey because I use it so much. But warp is edit, transform, warp. So there's a lot of tools to kind of fine tune these things after the fact. I think that looks pretty good. So I want to take a little stop here just to say hey to everyone in the chat. General Kenobi, Carol, good to see you. Azharl, hopefully I'm saying that right. What's up, Cody? General Kenobi, Sean. I saw a lot of familiar faces earlier on at the beginning of the stream. Frank, what's up, everybody? Ted, welcome on in. Good to see everybody. I just want to give you a little reminder at the end of this week on Friday, we're going to be doing a review stream. So if there's any techniques throughout all these challenges that we've been doing that you want me to kind of expand upon, or related things you want me to talk about, or you have any questions, we can do a sort of Q&A. Any sort of things you want clarity on or answers for, think of the questions now, shoot me them in Discord if you'd like, and we can cover them on Friday when we're doing the review stream. So I think this is pretty good for our shape. What I want to do here is actually give the backing shape, and I'm going to call this layer, double click and do backing shape. I like naming all my layers just to keep it organized. But what I'm going to do is a new layer, Control or Command, Shift N, hotkey for the new layer. I'm going to go to multiply for the blending mode, and I'm actually going to call this multiply shadow. That's on top of our backing shape. I'm going to right click it, do create clipping mask. So from here, what I want to do is paint in a shadow. I have my brush tool selected over here on the left. I have a large soft round brush selected, and I'm going to take my flow and put it down to around 10% up here at the top. This is going to give us a very gradual shadow. What I like to do for shadows in particular is I always choose like this kind of a little bit more than mid-tone desaturated color. See this? And I usually put it within this blue purple range. It's a cool color. Cool colors are usually what I use for shadows because it's a warm light source, so it's going to be a cool shadow. And then I like to put a little red in it. So in the purple range, it's not just blue, it's got some warm tones, because I find that works well for skin. So you can paint on it and see if it looks good, if it needs more red, if it needs more saturation. But I think that looks pretty good as a shadow. So I'm going to paint in at the top, and this low flow with a large round brush allows me to get a really smooth, gradual shadow. I'm going to paint around the back a little bit too, because most of the light's going to be coming in the front. Maybe paint a little bit on the side there. I can go darker too if I want to darken this down for a more intense shadow at the top, more of that ambient occlusion type shadow. And I think that looks pretty good, so we're gonna keep that. Maybe I'll do one little pass, take my flow all the way down to 4 and just hit the whole thing. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. So now we kind of have a bit of depth to our portrait here. What I want to do is give the face, this edge of the hole, a little bit of um, dimension, so it's not just such a sharp edge. So we're going to bevel and emboss that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my face layer, take the fill all the way down to 0, and then we're going to double click the face layer to get into the layer styles here. So bevel and emboss is what we're using. I already have my settings set up for this. You can tweak it and kind of play around with whatever looks good. But for this particular image, I found that outer bevel and chisel hard, that's probably what you're going to be using regardless of the image. Outer bevel and chisel hard for the technique. The depth I have maxed out at 1000%. The direction is down. You can see if it just kind of changes which direction the lighting is coming from. So I want the lighting coming from down or going down. The size I'm going to keep at 12. You can see how that affects it. It's really just the thickness of that edge that we're getting. But since it starts to go off on the left-hand side, I don't want to go too far with that. So I'm going to keep it at 12. Give you a better look here. Soften, I'm going to have it 5. That one doesn't affect it too much. And then the angle is 100 degrees and the altitude is 20 degrees. So 120, but you can play around with this and kind of see which direction the lighting comes from. Looks good for your image. Like that doesn't look too bad either. We got a shadow on top and then this on the bottom, but I'm gonna go stick with what I had. Maybe we'll try like 110. I think it was yeah, something like that looks pretty good. I'll keep what I had. 100 degrees for the angle, and I believe it was 25 for the altitude. And then the gloss contour we're keeping at linear. The screen, the highlight mode is set to screen and it's on white. Opacity is 50%. The shadow mode is, you can use black, but I have this really saturated red that's nearly black. I like to put color in my shadows. And then the opacity is 65, but you can adjust how deep you want your shadows with that effect. Maybe I'll take it down to 60. And I can click OK. And that gives us some nice depth to the hole there. It kind of bevels that edge, and I really like this edge down below. I think this adds some nice realism to it. It's catching a little bit of light there, so it looks like there's some thickness to this edge of the face. So I think what we want to do next is maybe make her look a little bit more alien. We're going for that surreal look, so I think it'd be cool to add some hue and saturation adjustments to this portrait. So I'm going to select my portrait layer. I'm going to go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, Hue and Saturation, and I'm going to right click that new layer and clip it to our portrait. So from here I can do the adjustments on hue. You can go crazy with this, whatever colors you want. We're going for like an alien look here, so there's blues, greens, whatever colors you can think of. I kind of like this purplish tone, like this bluish purplish skin tone. I think looks pretty cool. So I may do like something like this, like -21 for the hue. I might even boost the saturation up a bit. Let's try it. Yeah, I think keeping it at 0 looks pretty good. It's got some nice saturation to it. You can also darken and lighten it here, but I'm going to keep that at 0. And I think that looks pretty good. Next, what I want to do is, I think I might want to adjust the hue of the background. I don't like how they're both in such a purple blue tone. I'd like a little bit more hue contrast, color contrast. So I'm going to select the background layer. Forgot to name it background. And then I'm going to do the same thing. Layer, New Adjustment Layer, Hue and Saturation. Click OK. Right click that new layer. Create clipping mask to clip it to the galaxy. And I might try just adjusting the hue slightly. Maybe -15, 14 works good for this. You can see it just warms it up a bit. It's more of a turquoise. Getting more into those green tones, which I think contrasts it nicely. And one thing I might want to do is add this hue of the skin tone to the backing shape. We still have that like kind of fleshy colored backing shape. It doesn't really fit anymore. So I'm going to go to the hue and saturation layer that's clipped to the portrait, Command or Control J to duplicate that, bring that down on the backing shape. And since I dragged it under the multiply layer, it automatically clipped it. And from here, I might want to adjust it because that looks way too purple. It doesn't quite look good to me. So I think I'm going to adjust that a little bit here. Let's see. So let's try toning that down. I'm going to tone down the saturation too, because that's going to cool it down, which makes it look a little bit more in that purple range. And then I'm actually going to darken it too. It looks like it could be a little bit darker. So I can kind of fine tune it exactly how I want. I think that looks pretty good. You can see I got -30, -34, -22. I think that looks a little bit more fitting with the skin tone that we have now. So let's keep it there. Yeah, I think we're good. So that kind of concludes our portrait here, but I need a focal point. It's kind of boring. It's just this weird hole in the head, right? So I feel like we need some sort of focal point. I thought this would be cool. I got this like sort of spiraling galaxy type of image here. So I'm going to do Control or Command A to select all, Control or Command C to copy, and Control or Command V to paste this into our image here. Now I'm going to add this on the very top. Control or Command V. I'm going to add it on the very top layer. I'm going to right click it, do Create Smart Object, Convert to Smart Object rather, and that way we can scale this down. So I select the Move tool with V, I can scale this down a bit and make it fit within our image a little bit more. All right, so from here we can't really see anything. I'm going to press Enter to confirm. So I'm going to go to the blending mode. I'm going to set it to screen because I find that that's the one that works the best. You can kind of cycle through these and see if any have a look that works well. Like linear dodge works pretty well too. I think it's very similar to screen. And I'm going to keep it there. I think that looks pretty good. All right. All right, so I think what I want to do now, whoops, selected the wrong thing here. Yeah. All right, cool. So what I want to do is I want to mask the galaxy so it looks like it's coming within the head, right? So from here, what I would like to do is click the face to take that selection. And what I can do is I can mask, I can go to my galaxy and mask it out. I can click the mask button here at the bottom, and now it's masked out. But from here, what I want to do is I actually want to grab my selection tool, and I want to kind of select the opening of the face, like it's able to pop out the front. So from here, I can go in, and I can paint in, or fill in rather. So let's do everything. Let's select everything outside here, and just fill that in with white to reveal. Control D, and then we can kind of do the opposite of this here. We can Control or Command click the face to get that selection. Control Shift I to invert that selection. Whoops, painting on the wrong thing there. Actually, let's see here. I think that looks pretty good actually as is. Yeah, I like that. I think that looks pretty good. So what I can do here is have it come out the back. I'm going to actually Control or Command click the mask to select that. And then I believe we want to invert the selection. So I'm using the mask of the portrait, right? Then I'm going to do Control or Command Shift I, and I can paint out the back here. So I filled that in on the galaxy layer. So I'm adjusting the mask. So basically I just use the face and the portrait so that we can have the galaxy masked out just on this part of the face. It's still coming out the back. We can still have it adjusted to come out the front. So a lot of times I'll use various selections of other pieces to quickly mask these things out in an easy way. You can also unlink your layers here if you want to move the mask around and adjust it. You'll see if you do this, it's already masked out, it doesn't really work. But if you click this link here to unlink them, you can grab this and the mask will stay in place. See that? So you can kind of reposition it and adjust it as need be. From here, I might want to just mask out the edges because I noticed there's a hard seam. I'll just use black to kind of soften that bottom and soften that top anywhere I see a seam. But I think that looks pretty good. We are out of time. I was going to say the last thing we could do is we could go into our portrait layer, do a gradient overlay. If you have white for one color, for the far color, and you have a slightly darker tone for the other, and it's set to multiply, you'll get this nice little gradient. And I adjusted so it's just at the bottom. But I am out of time, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. Definitely join the Discord community. I'll be doing feedback today. We'll be looking those over. But I gotta run. You guys have a good one. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you all next time. Bye, everybody.